Alrighty, welcome back, boys and girls. It's your main math man, Shank, coming to you live from Zone Academy. In this video, working on the second part of the Unit 5 wrap-up. So again, what we're doing is we'll be able to review the topics covered and apply them to those Unit 5 questions. So for number 5, it says a cylinder has a radius of 6 or 1.6 meters, and then its volume is 95 cubic meters. Find its height to the nearest tenth of a meter. So what we're going to do, let's draw out our cylinder first. So we have that circular base on top, two sides to make the lateral face, make the dashed line to get some depth, and have the other circular base at the bottom. So we're going to say, okay, the radius r is going to be equal to 1.6. I'm going to say h is what we're trying to find, so we can say h equals a question mark because we do not know what that is yet. So what I can do first, I'm going to write the formula. So I have my formula. So my formula is going to be volume equals, we have pi times the radius squared times the height. And what we do know is it gives us volume first, and we're trying to solve for h. So now we can say this is going to be our substitute step. So we're going to say, okay, we have 95 is equal to, then we're going to say 3.14 for pi times 1.6 squared and times h, because h is unknown. And what we can do is we can multiply these together. So let me pull up Desmos real quick. And let me actually move it down a little bit. Okay. So we're going to say, what we can do is we can do 3.14 times 1.6, and I can say to the second power, like that. So it gives us this decimal. So let me write that down in here first. So we have this is going to be 95 is equal to 8.0384. And again, even though it says to round to the nearest tenth, we make sure we round at the very end because that will change our answer. So this is going to be times h. And so now we have our solve step. So we need to solve for h. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to divide both sides. I'm going to divide both sides by this amount. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8.0384. So that way I get h by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by that amount. And so I can take 95 divided by, I can do copy, paste, get this number in here. And what I need to do next is it says I need to round this answer to the nearest tenth. So what I do then is I'm going to say I'm going to round my answer. So I type in round, I click on what I got, copy it in, and now be careful because this is going to be rounded to the nearest whole number, but we need the tenth. So I'm going to say I hit comma, and then I say the number of decimal places. So I would say 1 decimal place. So we're going to say our answer is going to be 11.8 for this one. So we're going to say this one, h is going to be about 11.8, and we're going to say meters. So that height, rounded to the nearest tenth, because that's the first decimal place, is going to be 11.8 meters. Then for number 6, it says cones A and B both have a volume of 48 pi cubic units, but have different dimensions. Cone A has a radius of 6 units and height of 4 units. Find one possible radius and height for cone B. And explain how you know that they'll be the same volume as a cone. So what we can do is we can say, all right, we have a volume of a cone is going to be equal to the area of the base, so pi times the radius squared times h divided by 3. And so what that means is we have this. We're going to say we have 48 times pi for our volume, and we're going to say it's going to be equal to our formula. So we don't know what r squared or h is, but what we can do is we can kind of set it up like this. I'm going to use my inverse operations. I'm going to divide by pi to both sides to get rid of that, and then I'm going to multiply both sides by 3 to be able to cancel that out. So multiply both sides by 3. So on the right side it cancels out. On the left side we have 144. So this becomes 144 equals r squared times h. So what we can do is we can say, well, we can come up with different values that work for this. So what we could say is this. Let me write this on the side. I'm going to say as long as this is true, then any value of r and h is, or r and h works, we'll say. What we're talking about, as long as this part is true, then we know we are good. So as long as this r squared times h equals 144, we're good. So what I'm going to do on the side here is I'm going to say, let me do an example. I'm going to say let h equal 1. So that means if we plug this in, we're going to have 144 equals r squared times h, which is the same as 1, which if we simplify this, that's going to be 144 equals r squared, and we can solve for our radius by taking the square root of both sides. So now we're just going to say that our radius is going to be equal to 12 when the height is equal to 1. So here's one pair of radius and height that would work for that cone. Because when we plug them in, it ends up being equal to 48 pi. Moving to the back, it says this. It says there are many cylinders with a height of 9 inches. But R represent the radius and in inches, and V represent the volume in cubic inches. So for part A, it says complete the table by relating the radius and volume of the cylinders with a height of 9 inches. And write it as each as a multiple of pi, or you can round to the nearest whole number. So what I'm going to do is for each of these, so let me break this apart. I'm going to say what we're going to do. Actually, try drawing that a little bit better. Let's do it like that. Okay. So what we're going to do is for each of these, we're going to have these 3 steps. We're going to have a formula. So let me label these as steps. So we're going to have our formula. We're going to substitute. And we're going to solve. So what I suggest you guys do is use 3.14 for our value of pi. That way we can round to the nearest whole number. All right. So what we're going to do is for that first one, I'm going to say, okay, our radius is going to be 1. So again, we're going to do our formula first. So I have V equals pi times the radius squared times h, which means we're going to have this going to be volume equals 3.14 times our radius, which is 1, so we have 1 squared, times our height, which is 9. So make sure for each of these, you can make sure you're saying our height is going to be 9 inches. So when I multiply that out, I'm going to say this is going to be equal to 28.26 inches cubed, which when we round, we're going to say that's going to be about 28 inches cubed. Then for the next one, it has, for this one, we can say, all right, when r equals 2 now. So when r equals 2, same thing, we're going to say we have our volume equals pi times the radius squared times h, because we're talking about a cylinder. Plug in those values, meaning we substitute. So we're going to say volume is equal to 3.14 times our radius, which is 2, squared, times h, which is still 9. So when we multiply that out, you can use that Desmos calculator to check your answer. I'm going to say I have 113.04 inches cubed, which when we round to the nearest whole number, it's going to be 113 inches cubed. Then lastly, we're going to say our radius for this one is going to be 3. So we're going to say we have volume equals pi times the radius squared times h, which gives us still the same value. So we're going to say we have 3.14 times our radius, which is 3. So we have radius squared, so 3 to the second power times 9. So our volume for this one is going to be 254.34 inches cubed, which when we round it, it's going to be 254 inches cubed. So make sure that you're finding and solving each of those volumes for those 3 radiuses. Then in part B, it says, is there a linear relationship between the radius and the volume of these cylinders? Explain how you know. And what that means is the slope constant, meaning the same? And what we're going to say is no, there are 3 points in the table, or the 3 points in the table are not the same, are not on the same straight line, because the slope between the pairs is not the same. And so what I can do is I can show that. So for that first one, I'm saying this. I'm saying my slope from one point to next, so I have 1,28 and 2,113. Again, I have that's going to be plus 1, where this is going to be plus 50 or 85, sorry. And then our other one, we say and our other one is going to be like this. So we can make a little table here from those 2 points. So 2,113, and our last point is 3,254. Still increasing by 1, but our change in y is going to be 141. So again, just remember when you say about your slope. So when we write our slope, we're going to say our slope still is going to be, slope is going to be equal to the change in y divided by that change in x. And so since we have that first one, we're going to say 85 divided by 1 is not equal to 141 over 1. So since these two aren't the same, meaning our slope is not equal, we're going to say this is not a linear relationship. And then for the last one, it says for part C, it says if a cylinder with height 9 inches and a radius of r is filled with water, it can fill a certain pitcher. How many of these pitchers can the cylinder with height 9 and radius of 2r fill? Explain how you know. So what we're going to say is this. We're going to say it's actually 4 pitchers, because when you scale up, the radius is scaling up in 2 dimensions. So that just means when you scale up in 2 dimensions, the scale factor gets squared. So when you look at it like this, we're going to say, again, just like we did in previous problem, we're saying 2 squared, because we're getting that from that value is going to be equal to 4. So we're just multiplying it by 4. So make sure you can ask questions as they come up. Be sure to use that Desmos calculator carefully, and as always, super slam that subscribe button.